wave of COVID-19. The Cabinet Subcommittee on COVID met earlier and agreed to publish a plan for reopening through September and the winter on August 31st. It's expected government will wait to see how the reopening of schools go before anything else. Taoiseach Micheál Martin has said the reopening plan will be cautious.
Well, I'm not going to get into the detail of what will be decided. I think social distancing is still with us now, and the CMO has been at pains to point out that the wearing of masks, social distancing and so on is very important, and also that we haven't reached the peak of this phase of COVID yet, that the numbers will continue to increase over the next number of weeks, and that it could be mid to late September before that peak is reached.
A hotel owner says the Republic is losing tourism business to Northern Ireland due to looser restrictions around hospitality in the region. Paul Diver, chair of the Donegal branch of the Irish Hotels Federation, says while he's in favour of tighter measures to limit the spread of the virus, it's had an impact on trade.
There was quite a large concert in Northern Ireland at the weekend, and a huge percentage of people work from the Republic of Ireland going to Northern Ireland. And those people, they need to stay somewhere, be it in a bed and breakfast or in a hotel. They need to eat. They're probably going to have a few drinks. So that's a huge source of business. So certainly Northern Ireland it looks more attractive. The less restrictions that are there make it look more attractive for some people.
The Chief Medical Officer says the incident rate of COVID-19 is rising rapidly across the country. Tony Houlihan says over 12,000 cases have been detected in the past week. It comes as 1,818 new cases of the virus were confirmed this evening. The Taliban says it can't be blamed for the chaos and deaths at Kabul airport in Afghanistan. At least 12 people have died since Sunday, but by gunshots or in stampedes. There have been distressing scenes as people tried to flee the country after the militant group took control. This man from London says his paperwork is in order, but is still stuck outside the airport.
I've been stuck here for the past 2 days. I'm trying to get in. I went to the Americans. They pushed me out. They kicked me out. I went to the Germans. They beat me out with the sticks. They fired us. You see these gas fires that they make you cry?
Yeah, tear gas.
Yeah, tear gas.
My mom is sick.
He's a 1 year old kid.
It's 9:02.
Newstalk Weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Extend your summer with a holiday to sunshine beaches in Spain, Italy, Portugal and Greece.
Rain will extend from the Atlantic, turning heavy in parts of West Munster and West Connacht, but it'll be patchy in the eastern half of the country, with some areas remaining dry. Mild, with temperatures not falling below 13 to 15 degrees. And now you're up to date on Newstalk.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the best partnership since Vidic and Ferdinand. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then.
What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Welcome along to the Football Show. On this Thursday night, we'll be looking forward to the start of Serie A with Nicky Bandini in around half an hour's time. Jose Mourinho's Roma have put 1 foot in the next round, winning 2-1 on the road tonight. Tottenham are struggling currently, though. 1-0 down away to Ferreira, about 15 minutes left in Portugal. And we'll talk about Shamrock Rovers' 4-2 defeat in Estonia in a few moments' time. Just to bring you up to speed on the scores in the Europa League qualifiers, Rangers 0-0 started the second half in their game in Armenia against the Laxkert. Earlier today, there was a victory for Legia away from home against Slavia Prague. Sturm Graz have beaten Mura by 3-1. Olympiacos currently lead 1-0 against Slovan Bratislava, and we wonder about what might have been. And Rapid Vienna are currently 1-0 up against FK Zoria. They're the scores so far in the Europa League. In the Conference League, Spurs still have 14 minutes left to try and turn that around. Dan McDONNELL is with us. Dan, how are you getting on?
Hi Will, how are things?
I'm good. I'll kick off with Shamrock Rovers because that could have been a really good result if Rovers don't concede the fourth goal at the end. If after Scales' goal they go away with a 3-2, you're thinking it might be on in Tala next week, but it's a big ask now, particularly where away goals don't count anymore.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing you could say from the positive slant is that, they had this exact experience against Slovan Bratislava last month, where they were 2 goals down, got into the second leg. Really strong performance at home, got it back to level, and then got done by a sort of a dodgy refereeing decision or a bad goal to give away. So, yeah, I know what you're saying about the it would have been a sort of good result at 3-2. It would have been sort of the way you phrase it, and I was writing it, making the best of a bad situation. That defensively, that's probably as bad as they've they've played, I think, that Rovers side. I know that you would speak to some people who play against them regularly, and they would say that with Rovers back three, and the way they play, like they are a positive attacking team, and they give opposing teams chances. And I suppose they live on the edge a bit sometimes, like they're reliant on the back three to sort of sweep up some issues sometimes. And the first leg away in Bratislava, they lost 2-0, but they gave away a penalty at the end, and it almost looked like Flora maybe had sort of watched some previous times where Rovers maybe have been exploited and sought to punish them, and they succeeded in doing it. But I mean, I agree with the premise of the point that if Liam Scales, if that is the end of the game, it's 3-2, I think Rovers are favourites to go through, to be honest. I think now with the 2-goal lead, it leaves them with a real uphill task. And I don't know. I mean, this is a great opportunity for them. It's sometimes, we talk about Irish clubs. No, I say sometimes, all the time. In fact, we talk about Irish football generally. Even like the Peamount game yesterday, they got hammered. And I was almost thinking about that, going, how many times are we going to do this story about, well, you're up against a team with more resources or this or that. And it's always the way in Irish football. But what Rovers have here is a tie against the champions of Estonia to get into the group stages. It's not one where if they go out, you console yourself afterwards by saying, well, you just can't compete with that. You can't compete with a team with those riches, like maybe Bows could when they lost to Pauk. And you see Dundalk, who really should have gone very close against Vitesse Arnhem last week. You see Vitesse Arnhem have drawn 3-3 away with Anderlecht tonight. And you're thinking, okay, but you can't compete with that type of clout. But you're playing against the champions of Estonia, all Estonian players, and they're a good outfit, clearly, and their results in Europe this year have been good. But this is one that in Mick McCarthy terms, if you'd offered them that at the start of the competition, they'd have taken this for the group stages. So if that fourth goal comes to hurt them, they'll find it hard to get over it, to be honest.
Do Rovers lack a little bit of balance, Dan? We were chatting to John Giles about this earlier, that at times they were overrun in midfield, which meant that Manis was more busy than he probably should have had to been because the way the defence was left exposed sometimes on the counter-attack. Are they lacking that little bit of balance in midfield? Yeah, I think as the way they play with a back three and like attacking, the wing backs are urged to get forward. I think the big issue is obviously then there's a big responsibility on the two midfielders, the two sort of more holding midfielders, I suppose, in Gary O'Neill and Dylan Watts. And Dylan Watts is probably more of a creative player. And I suppose the argument would be, in hindsight, could you have gone with a more defensive-minded player in there? But they don't necessarily really have one. I mean, Chris McCann is just back from injury, maybe, who's a very experienced player. But I think, for Rovers to do that would be to alter the way that they play, to alter the style that has carried them where they are. And generally, like, they are a bit more efficient defensively than that. But maybe just sort of stepping up to European competition, whereas they have the ability to own the ball in the games in the League of Ireland because they're so good in that department, that maybe, without the ball, they've been exposed a small bit more in Europe. And it maybe, has potentially exposed a slight lack of balance, but also as well, and I think that that's a valid point, but you can also say that and also say as well that some of the errors they made tonight were just really bad mistakes as well too. I mean, Stephen Bradley was training in on that point, but I mean, just some of the goals they gave away. Again, you don't mind sort of bowing and going, well, listen, you can't compete with that type of quality, but really, it was self-inflicted aspects of it, and I don't think it's dead by any means, but it certainly leaves them needing something pretty special next week. Whereas at 3-2, it just needed something pretty, just play to their level. They need to probably go above them now to make the most of it from this situation. Well, there's plenty of goals in the Shamrock Rovers team, so if it becomes a shootout next week, Rovers will fancy scoring goals, and their approach is going to have to be that, given that it's a 2-goal deficit when they start. And we got to see again the best of Graham Burke tonight with his finish for his goal as well, Dan. Yeah, and it's a strange one in a way, because I actually was surprised that they went for Burke, that they played Graham Burke ahead of Danny Mandrew, who's been very good this year. I mean, and could arguably, you could argue, is he slightly more
alert in terms of going the other way. And it's a very positive move to go with Graham Burke, as you would expect. But I mean, Stephen Bradley, would say, Graham Burke can produce a goal like that from his from nothing. His European goal scoring record is very good, and so it proved. And to be honest, I mean, he scored one goal and made the other, so it's very hard to quibble with his inclusion. He's a very good player, and there is goals in the side, definitely. I mean, can they score 2 goals next week? Absolutely. There's absolutely no doubt. I mean, there's going to be, it's up to 3,500 next week, so close to 50% capacity, and it will be intense. And I think it'll be just a bit more on top of Flora Tallinn, who are still playing under pressure because they're trying to be the first Estonian club to get into a group stage. So, I mean, the one thing about away goals being taken out of the equation is that there's no, it is really just halfway in the tie. It's a 180-minute shootout who scores the most goals. It's not a case that you're left in some situation where the away goal, which in this case would have actually played the Rovers' favour with 2 away, but it's pretty straightforward. I mean, Rovers score early next week and you cancel out that late goal and that's it, you go for it. And you would imagine they'll start the game with a fair bit of intensity at home. And they were very good against Bratislava at home. They were actually as a unit, they were far tighter. They just were a lot more compact. The gaps that were there tonight just weren't evident, similar to the first leg in Bratislava. So you're, from their perspective, you're sort of hoping that home turf just leads to an all-round more coherent display. And if they score first, it's very much game on, and it's as you were. But I think, I mean, you could see in general play, at times tonight when Rovers kept the ball quite well, that they actually probably have some better players in certain areas of the park, or certainly they're well able to cause Flora problems, as much as they had, the Estonian team. I mean, I think 11 of the Flora squad were in the most recent national team squad. I think 8 players played in one of their most recent games. It wasn't far off playing the Estonian national team tonight, and they look like a team that know each other very well and they know their game and they have a great understanding. But you still feel, if Rovers can score first and get the crowd behind them, it's still there for them. But they've set themselves a scenario here they didn't need to set themselves.
Can I ask you about scales? Because I was chatting to Shane Keegan a couple of weeks ago and he felt that it's probably a case of Shamrock Rovers keep him around once they're still going for European qualification, and in all likelihood he probably moves on at that point. The interest in him has been pretty intense, particularly from Celtic, but Shane was thinking that with his performance, also with his versatility defensively, more clubs than Celtic may well come in for him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the vibe seemed to be it probably will be Celtic, though. I think there was other interest, but I mean, speaking to Stephen Bradley after the game on Sunday, that was the game against Drogheda, when he sort of confirmed he would still be travelling, and I think they'll do everything to have him involved in the second leg. And I'd say the fact that Celtic and there's a link with Dermot Desmond probably helps in terms of, relations and not putting pressure on to get the move done quickly. But the language was very much, both clubs are happy with where they are. It wasn't a week prior to that, Stephen Bradley was talking about other clubs, whereas this was very much about 2 clubs having an understanding about a situation. And I think the understanding is that Liam Scales will go to Celtic. Probably not his best game tonight, I have to say, as much as he scored. And he is a very versatile player. And has been very good at left wing back this year, but maybe Sean Hoare was playing on that side tonight on the left of the 3, and I'm not sure if their understanding was 100% perfect on occasion. But it's strange. He's obviously trying to go out in style and put a lot into it, but actually maybe just guilty of 1 or 2 sort of rash mistakes tonight that you wouldn't have character been, wouldn't define him normally, but not his best night.
Yeah, not the only Shamrock Rovers player to make a few uncharacteristic errors tonight. Dan, it's been a decent start for some of the Irish players across channel so far. We've had a couple of rounds now in the EFL between the Championship and the games lower down in the divisions, and I follow a lot of the accounts which put up goals and assists when Irish players are involved, and those accounts were absolutely flying at the weekend. We had Parrott scoring and assisting a goal for the MK Dons. Callum Robinson seems to have started the season particularly well. We might chat about Duffy with Brighton back in the Premier League and a good performance from him at the weekend. But it seems a few of the Irish players, which is good news for Stephen Kenny ahead of picking a squad, have started the season pretty well in the Championship and below.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it almost feels like you'd prefer if, like, Saturday 3 o'clock and Sunday 4 o'clock and 2 o'clock would be sort of prime time slots for the Irish players, whereas now it's a bit more the Tuesday evenings and the Wednesday evenings. You're looking at the EFL lineups and maybe the live goals shows, and that's where you're seeing some of the characters pop up. And I mean, you could say that's a reflection of maybe where the players are at the moment, but it has been an encouraging week from that respect. I mean, Troy Parrott is the one that immediately springs to mind. The fact he scored for MK Dons last Saturday, also scored on Tuesday. And I think what you're going to see with Troy Parrott this year at MK Dons is that he's playing on a really attacking side that creates a lot of goal-scoring opportunities. And it's not just that he scored a couple of goals. I think if people have been able to see the goals, I think it's actually the manner of the goals that he scored as well, where he's made sort of intelligent runs. His movement off the shoulder defender has been very good, and he's finished really confidently. And I think he's already equalled his tally in the entirety of last season, which was, loan-wise, was a difficult time for him. Now it is in League One, and that is the obvious point that someone would make if they start saying, well, Troy Parrott now has to play for Ireland, and it's like, well, he's done it at League One level, and in recent times we've been able to probably on occasion have a sort of a sniffy attitude towards players in League One because there's players operating at a higher level. But I think we sometimes always just break it down to the next Ireland game in the next window, and maybe that's not actually fair. I think we just need to look at it generally and say that for all the expectation around Troy Parrott, he's like a 19-year-old. He's still 19, and not everyone has a good loan spell first time round. And if this can be a loan spell that allows him to develop and to play in front of crowds on a regular basis and all different types of scenarios that he will face in League One, and get his confidence up, but then that'll stand to him in the long term because it feels like he needed it. But there's others as well. I mean, Gavin Bazunu at Portsmouth is in League One again. Brilliant save on Tuesday. And it's going to be a big year for him. And there's others we can talk about. The Championship lads at West Brom certainly have had a very good start to the season too.
Yeah, if we look at West Brom then, like, Robinson is an active possible false nine when it comes to next month too. And look, he started the new season with an eye for goals straight away, Dan.
Yeah, he scored. I mean, they've played 3 games and he scored in all of them, which is it's a perfect start really. Now, in his case, there's been a couple of scrappy ones, but he's been in the right place. Yeah, and in fairness, his goal on the first day against Bournemouth was a great finish. West Brom hammered Sheffield United last night with long throws, and both Robinson and Darragh O'Shea's goals came from the sort of the consequence of sort of balls ping-ponging around the box. But yeah, like, Callum Robinson is one that Kenny has always given you the impression that he really likes him. At times with Callum Robinson in Ireland, it's been a question of where he actually plays. And what we did see in Serbia in March when Kenny went with the 3 at the back, we saw him employed in the striking department. At times he's been on the right or on the left, more so the right of like a sort of a front 3 or a 4-2-3-1, and it hasn't always necessarily allowed him to showcase his main attributes. And it may well be that in a team that's devoid of goals, and maybe he's not 100% like an out striker completely, in the way maybe that some other options might be. He's certainly putting his hand up for inclusion. And injury has he was involved in the March window, and then he wasn't around in the summer. But I still think if he arrives fit and well, he'll be well in there. I mean, Darragh O'Shea is an interesting one for me because I think it's almost like these defenders, like, there's always they come in, or any player really, they come in initially and there was a great surprise element to what Darragh O'Shea was doing in the Championship. He made his Championship debut in December of a season, and then by the end of it was promoted, went straight into the Premier League, and everything was like, well, he's a pleasant surprise, this is great. Whereas now, all of a sudden, this is his first season where he's dropping down to the Championship and is expected to be a big player. With Ireland, he's now more of a first-choice player with a bit more expectation. And he seems to have started the season like someone who's relishing that as opposed to being overburdened by it.
He never seemed that concerned. We had him on the show last year and we were talking about the step up to the Premier League, and he seemed to take it in his stride. Unfortunately for him, West Brom didn't have the players to stay in the Premier League, but he seems a confident kind of lad, and it didn't faze him at all going straight into the Irish team when there were some defensive injuries and a drop off of form in the case of Duffy. He just walked straight into the side and looked perfectly at home.
Yeah, and I really think I don't think his position in the Ireland team is under much threat at all. Even though, like you mentioned, Shane Duffy has come back to form, which is great. But I think O'Shea is fairly safe in most combinations and in most systems, I would think. I mean, if Kenny went with a back four in any of these games coming up, I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility O'Shea would end up at left back even. But I think what Kenny seems to like about him is that he's a good passer of the ball, and I think with his defenders stepping forward and being encouraged to pass the ball, I think he likes O'Shea's range, but he can play on either side of a back three as well, and he's just like that's just ability. But as you say, I think attitude as well is a big thing too. But he's one that went out and played the loan circuit again, went to Exeter, wasn't necessarily making massive headlines, but you can see that he's got a good head on his shoulders, I think, and I think where he's come on a lot in 18 months, and I don't necessarily think we've got anywhere near the bottom of where he can go to either.
We were debating on the news round earlier, Dan, who potentially play at left wing back for the games coming up. And I know we're a few weeks away and injuries and form are going to be dependent, but hopefully Matt Doherty can be reinvigorated at Spurs now that he's got Nuno managing him again.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be some debate around that, though, doesn't there, with the people who cover the Spurs beat about whether Nuno really fancies him in the context of Spurs, and depending on whether he's going to play with the back four, which was the suggestion, certainly. And we'll see if what happens on the opening weekend is the sort of template for the way forward. But I mean, we do need that to happen. That's certainly something that Stephen Kenny needs to happen. And I think, that debate around left wing back, I think it's possible that across the 3 games there'll be 3 at the back in one game and a back 4 in another. And you wonder, will that impact on things? I think James McLean's move to Wigan and playing regularly there, and not that fitness is ever going to be an issue with him, but I think he brings a certain intensity to things that I think Kenny still quite likes. So I think he's probably, as much as Ryan Manning has started the season quite well with Swansea, I actually think it's more, with Enda Stevens out, I think it's more a case of does he go with McLean there? Does he flip Matt Doherty to that side? Or is it a case where you go with Darragh O'Shea if you're going for maybe a back 4 or not? And it could just be Doherty or McLean left back. I think they're the players in the game, as opposed to someone like Manning, who started the season pretty well for his club. And there is that debate. I mean, you want to get Matt Doherty on the pitch ideally, but then there's a question of balance and being suited on the left side too. So there's a couple of equations to consider with it.
There is football on Off the Ball, of course, so thanks to Paddy Parrott. For information on responsible gambling, check out gamblingcare.ie. We mentioned at the outset, Dan, this reinvigorated looking Shane Duffy, which from an Irish perspective was great to see last weekend. He got in the Premier League team of the weekend for how he played with Brighton and Hove Albion. You're just hoping that the miserable year of last year is put behind him, whether it's at Brighton or whether it's elsewhere, and that Shane Duffy can get back to the player he was before last year.
Yeah, definitely. I think actually, in fairness, he was one that from the end of season summer break, I think he really benefited from it, as in the end of season internationals. I mean, where rather than going off into the summer with the memories of that dreadful year at Celtic, he got in and around the Ireland camp and got to play that game in Hungary and got a fair bit of praise for his performance, and maybe that just set him off on the right note into the summer. And then, from listening to some of what he said, he seems to have decided to make some changes in his life. I'm sure he'll talk about that in more detail when he's pressed on it, and he's come back in good shape. Now, it did take a bit of a COVID case to open the door for him late in the day last week, but he was ready for it. He wasn't moping in the background, with bereft of confidence and wondering about his future. Now, it is an interesting one. I mean, where does he stand? Does this save his Brighton future, or does it merely put him in the shop window for someone else?
I would think it's probably the latter, given that they were happy enough to let him go the year before.
That to me is probably the percentage call, although, and particularly again, I mean, he played in the back three last week, which some would say that wouldn't necessarily always suit him. But he did do that. But it depends. I mean, it wouldn't shock you if he was involved in transfer discussions right up till the last minute. And certainly his options would be better now, I think. I think people probably need to see that he's back to himself. And that will remind people that, yes, we'd like to have him at our club. In that case, where that club might be, would it be the Championship? You'd think that's the most likely scenario. But I don't know. It sort of depends. I mean, even the fact that a COVID case can hit a camp at short notice and hurt them, which is something that we're going to have to, get used to. It's happening in clubs, home, abroad, everywhere, all codes and all sports. You kind of wonder, are some managers and teams going to want to carry a bigger squad to be prepared for those eventualities? So if there is to be a sequence of events that sees them going, Brighton would need to have a fair bit more cover there than they possibly do at the moment, I think. So I wouldn't say it's a certainty that he moves on. And maybe, I think Veltman might be out again this week, I think. So if he gets another chance and does well again, then all of a sudden he's making a case for something more.
Well, watch this space over the next 12 days. Dan, good to chat to you.
Thanks, Will.
Just a reminder again of our competition. We are giving away €25,000. It's your chance to win a life-changing sum of money. What you do with it: build an extension, buy a boat, book that dream holiday. It's all up to you. €25,000 could be yours this Friday. All you have to do is answer this question and we could be calling you back tomorrow afternoon. Which reality TV show is ending after 17 years? Is it A, The X Factor, or B, Strictly Come Dancing? Text the word play to 57599 with your answer A or B. It'll cost you €2.50 to play plus your standard message rate. You have to be over the age of 18 and you will be playing across the Go Loud network of stations. Full terms are available on our website. Get the entry in by tomorrow at 3 p.m. and we could be calling you. You have to answer within 5 rings if you want to win the competition and the €25,000 in cash. So text play and your answer to 57599 and the best of luck. We'll be back talking Serie A.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. New normal, same old football. Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
On tomorrow's Pat Kenny Show, the business of hens and stags in Carrick-on-Shannon. Did you know we had our own version of the Scandinavian sauna here in Ireland? Coping with flooding when it's almost 100% guaranteed every winter. Music, food, sport and the Friday Forum, as well as all the latest national and international breaking news.
The Pat